Did you know that 95% of your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease is considered environmental, not genetic? We often hear about the dangers of air pollution and microplastics, but the single biggest environmental exposure we face every day, the one we have the most control over, is what we eat. And here's the scary part. Ultra-processed food, or UPF, that colorful, packaged stuff that fills our grocery aisles, is now scientifically associated with virtually every single mental health disease, cancer, diabetes, and most importantly, dementia. We've been seriously misled about what healthy food truly is. Today, we're going to dive into a groundbreaking theory that directly connects ultra-processed food, sugar, and even so-called diet sweeteners to the very root cause of Alzheimer's disease. It all comes down to a critical energy crisis happening right now inside your brain cells. Stick around, because understanding this could change everything. To really get what causes neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's, we need to talk about energy. Every single cell in your body, and especially your brain cells, which are incredibly energy hungry, relies on a molecule called ATP, that's adenosine triphosphate. Think of it as the chemical energy currency that powers everything a cell does. This energy is produced in tiny factories inside your cells called mitochondria. Anything that messes with ATP production, anything that depletes it, puts the entire cell, the entire neuron, at risk of breaking down. And this brings us to the first major problem: reactive oxygen species, or ROS. When your mitochondria are busy converting food into ATP, they naturally produce a kind of toxic exhaust. These are the reactive oxygen species, or oxygen radicals. In a healthy system, your body neutralizes these harmful fumes with antioxidants, things like vitamin E and vitamin C that you get from real food. But here's where your diet can turn against you. First, let's talk about sweeteners. Studies show that non-nutritive sweeteners, specifically common ones like aspartame and sucralose, cause your body to generate huge amounts of these ROS radicals. In fact, ROS generation is strongly correlated with dementia. Second, if your diet is full of ultra-processed foods, you're likely not getting the nutrients needed to build up your body's antioxidant defenses. You're producing more toxic fumes and simultaneously getting rid of your fire extinguishers. These excess ROS then create a vicious cycle. They send a signal to the cell telling it to shut down energy production to protect itself, which further reduces your precious ATP supply. But it gets worse. Let's talk about fructose. Fructose is a sweet molecule found in regular sugar. It doesn't just add empty calories, it actively gets in the way of your mitochondria's ability to generate ATP. It directly inhibits the process. The bottom line is, if something you eat doesn't contribute to cell growth or get burned for energy, it's essentially acting as a poison to your system. So, to recap, you've got ultra-processed foods and sugar creating a perfect storm, high levels of damaging ROS, a lack of protective antioxidants, and fructose directly blocking your energy factories. The result? A sharp drop in ATP generation. So your brain's energy supply is already plummeting because of a poor diet. But the crisis doesn't stop there. At the exact same time, the energy demand in your brain is often skyrocketing, making the whole situation much, much worse. A major culprit behind this increased demand is a hormone you've probably heard of, cortisol. Cortisol is our primary stress hormone. It's released when we're under physical or emotional pressure, when we don't get enough sleep, or even when we take certain medications like steroids. And what does cortisol do to your brain cells? It forces your neurons to ramp up their metabolism to burn energy much, much faster. This drastically increases their utilization of ATP. So let's put the two pieces together. On one side, you have decreased ATP generation thanks to ultra-processed foods, sweeteners, and sugar-creating ROS and inhibiting your mitochondria. On the other side, you have increased ATP utilization driven by stress and cortisol. What happens when your energy supply is dropping while your energy demand is soaring? You create a massive energy crisis inside each and every neuron. It's like your bank account is being drained while your bills are suddenly doubling. The immediate symptoms of this neuronal energy crisis might seem subtle at first. You might experience it as brain fog, that feeling of mental cloudiness, or maybe you feel more irritable or even depressed. But when this crisis becomes chronic, when it happens day after day, the long-term outcome is truly devastating. This cellular energy crisis is the final, crucial link to the formation of plaques, which are the infamous hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. Let me explain how this works. Inside every healthy neuron, there are normal proteins called amyloid precursor peptide, APT, or APP. To stay properly dissolved and functional within the cell, these proteins need energy. Specifically, they need a steady supply of ATP. But what happens the moment ATP levels drop because of that energy crisis we just talked about? The moment the energy runs out, these AP proteins can no longer stay in solution. They begin to clump together, to aggregate. These clumps, these aggregates, are what we know as amyloid plaques. Once these plaques form, they start to physically damage the neuron. This damage then triggers an inflammatory response. The brain's immune cells, called microglia, rush to the scene to try and clean up the mess. But this cleanup process itself can cause more damage. This entire cascade of events, plaque formation, inflammation, and cellular damage, legitimately leads to the death of the neuron. And the widespread death of neurons is the medical definition of dementia. So you can see the direct line. Anything that contributes to the first two steps, anything that generates ROS-like sweeteners, or anything that increases ATP demand like chronic stress, ultimately and inevitably leads to this third and final step, plaque formation, neuron death, and Alzheimer's disease. So, if 95% of Alzheimer's risk is environmental, what can you actually do about it? The good news is, you have the power to mitigate a huge portion of that risk by addressing the things you can control. Here's a simple, actionable plan that anyone can follow to support their brain health. First, and this is the most critical step, Eliminate ultra-processed foods and added sugar from your diet. This is non-negotiable. This single action cuts off the primary source of excess ROS generation. It removes the fructose that inhibits your mitochondria, and it forces you to eat real food that contains the antioxidants your body desperately needs. Second, learn to read labels. If a food product has a label, you should view it as a warning label. A simple rule of thumb: if sugar is listed in the first 3 ingredients, treat that item like a dessert, not a daily staple. Third, change how you shop. Stick to the perimeter of the grocery store. This is where you'll find the fresh produce, the meats, the dairy, the real, whole foods. The inner aisles are where about 73% of items contain hidden sugars and other problematic ingredients. And a pro tip: never go grocery shopping when you're hungry. You're far more likely to make poor choices. Fourth, embrace exercise. While exercise might not directly cure a sugar craving, it is absolutely essential for brain health. Exercise builds more mitochondria, improves your muscle mass, and is one of the most effective ways to reduce your risk for dementia. And finally, address your stress. Remember, high cortisol levels increase your brain's energy demand. Finding healthy ways to manage stress, whether it's through meditation, hobbies, or spending time in nature, is crucial for maintaining cellular energy balance. The ultimate goal is to boost your mitochondrial function and increase ATP generation. This prevents the cellular energy crisis from ever happening in the first place, protecting your neurons from plaque formation. If you find yourself struggling with a sugar addiction, remember that tolerance is the first sign. That's when you need more and more of something to get less and less of a reward. To heal, you must remove the offending stimulus, whether that's sugar or refined carbohydrates. This gives your dopamine receptors a chance to recover and reset. It isn't a quick fix, but it's an absolute necessity for your long-term health, because at the end of the day, reducing your consumption of sugar and ultra-processed food is job number 1 for improving both your metabolic and your neurological health. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please give it a like and subscribe for more content on how to take control of your health.